of all is that it's exciting times for me, and I think for the whole of Africa. It then shows that we're able to take charge of our development institutions. Don't forget that the AfDB remains the only development institution that really does have a majority of Africa's shareholding. So the fact that we're able to take control and determine the direction is a big deal. But Dr. Akinwumi's re-election is even a bigger deal because it shows that Africa has a voice and can use its voice. One of the things he's been talking about is the fact of looking at value addition and the bank supporting African to grow industry. And that's something we're going to be looking forward to. So for me, it's exciting times. It talks about development. It talks about increasing impact. It talks about the fact that Africa can actually begin to talk about value addition with regards to the agricultural sector. And those, for me, are very big deals right now.
Thank you so much. That's actually part of the high fives that he's in his first term initiatives. Boason, let me come to you. A little bit of a tougher question here. We've got rising unemployment, rising poverty. In fact, Nigeria is projected to be, in fact, is already poverty capital of the world in two of our big hubs, Nigeria, South Africa. Has the AfDB made a difference?
Well, we're talking about 1.2 billion people on the planet, also on the continent, and various demographies, various economies, various governments. You're talking about 54, 55 sovereigns. You're talking about different level of development. So it's been a very tough history for Africa, and 5 years is not enough to erase decades and decades of mismanagement on the continent by political leaders. Look at what is happening in Mali and elsewhere, and you think that in this part of the world at this point in time, we will be hearing of military coup any longer. But that's just north of Nigerian border. So that tells you that political instability across the continent is still something to deal with. The political risks that investors, whether they're buying Eurobond or they're buying our local equities or whatever, the premium that we pay for political instability or political risk is high. So there's a limit to which the AfDB can work on that. So what the AfDB has done by an organization through the ADF, the African Development Fund, and some of his subsidiaries, as it were, like the Africa 50, the Africa Investment Forum and others, is to work more through the private sector. So if you look at the engagements with Nigeria, with the AfDB Nigeria and a few others, so they work with subnationals on agriculture, they work with some other countries on the side of power, for example. They try to go a little bit, work with the governments, but go a little bit under the radar and beginning to make impacts. And I think that will work. And I think it's been working. So, but again, the bigger picture, the leadership of Africa rests with the leaders of Africa. AfDB is a development finance institution. Those who make hard political decisions, what you call the political will to get things done, still rest with the heads of governments across the continent. So this goes back to the African Union and its many agencies, beg your pardon. Until they put their house together and come through strong political leadership, like you see in Europe or across some countries in Asia, Taiwan, Vietnam, Japan, and a few others. You need strong political leadership leading through the front. Look at Shinzo Abe resigning today on ill health. He's come through with Abenomics that have helped the Japanese economy through his term. You need strong leaders on the African continent. Akinwunmi Adesina is a strong leader as a development finance person and leading a great institution. Therefore, there's a limit to which he can intervene in the political leadership of every country. For example, and I go back to this point I made a few days ago, which is how long it takes us to conceptualize a project, put it through the cabinet for approval, and then look for the funding for it, either 100% locally or counterparty funding with foreign investment, and get it on the ground. What is the cost of making a road or a mileage of a rail line? How long does it take to build a shipyard or an economic zone? All of this does not lie with the AfDB, but the AfDB will keep working and try to persuade political leaders and political actors for example, in Nigeria, you have the executive branch and the legislative branch. The AfDB will not do the job of the legislative branch. They are to make relevant laws, make sure the executive is on top of everything, make sure the costs of running government and development projects are tight to the last kobo with value for money. If you don't see that across governments across the continent, then what the AfDB is doing will just be, well, keep doing the best that they can and keep hoping that the political leaders will give them the helping hand. So as the old saying goes, you can't clap with one hand. Therefore, the AfDB is doing strongly, is getting strong support. Look at the comment of the president, Ivorian President Alassane Ouattara in his support. Look at what tremendous support that AfDB had given Ivory Coast, which was a failed state with the civil war. But go to Abidjan today and go all the way to Yamoussoukro and elsewhere within the country. You will see the footprints of the AfDB. And you go to other parts of the continent. But again, the big political leadership will have to come from those who are elected officials of each of the 55 countries within the African Union. They will have to make those decisions. They will have to put their feet down. They will have to ensure that their term in office counts. Adesina will come into AfDB and go. But each sovereign within the African continent will remain. So when you investors are looking into Africa from outside, they're not looking at AfDB first. They are looking at the leadership of each of the countries within the continent, right? So the support that AfDB has gotten from the shareholders within and outside the continent is a vote of confidence that, like, if we increase the shareholding or the capital base of the AfDB north of $200 billion from double digit to triple digit, that is a show of confidence for the AfDB and the good work that is being done on the ground in support of those high fives. So I agree. There's a lot more to be done.
Perfect. You mentioned the high fives. Ibim, let me come to you. Should the various initiatives of Dr. Adesina in the last 5 years, especially the high fives, as Boason has just mentioned, let me list them for our viewers. Light Up and Power Africa, Feed Africa, Industrialize Africa, Integrate Africa, improve the quality of life for the people of Africa. Should those be sustained, or should he be considering new initiatives?
But clearly, it only makes sense that they should be sustained. We've also talked about the fact that 5 years isn't enough. Look at the interventions already that have been made with regards to power. Look at the kind of funding that has gone to the creation of the Segu solar power plant in Mali. And this is the largest of its kind in Africa. Look at the interventions in the hydropower plants in Cameroon. Look at the fact that the AfDB is beginning to fund clean energy. So they're talking going green and alternative energy solutions. Now, I think it would be crazy to even begin to talk of stopping those initiatives, because these initiatives, I mean, power is not something that you conclude in 5 years. So I really do not think that it makes any sense to start talking about us stopping any of those high fives. I think the high fives are actually things that will help grow and deepen the economy in Africa. Right now, with the AfDB spending about $2 billion, in energy projects annually, I would even say perhaps they should begin to think of increasing it. So when you look at power, when you look at the interventions in the social sector, and the fact that gradually you're beginning to see that those interventions are yielding results, is it as fast as we would like? No. We would like to see more things happening. Perhaps, in terms of job creation, the fact that there's still a lot of unemployment. But unemployment is not something only the AfDB can do. The AfDB can only support. So when you see the AfDB working to deepen agricultural value addition, create the requisite value chains, ensure that there's transformation processes with regards to creation of agro-industrial processing zones and stuff like that, the AfDB is funding as it should. And I don't think, quite frankly, that we'll talk about ending those now. It's just been 5 years. This is an initiative that's just started, and I think we need to actually leverage on it, increase funding, and support those initiatives.
Thank you for that, Ibim. Boason, let me come back to you. So the AfDB is now moving forward after those allegations from the whistleblowers were made. In fact, let's pull up this U.S. Treasury letter to the AfDB. We've got a summary there of a number of things that they mentioned. And one of them says here to emphasize, in fact, the second to the last point there, emphasize freedom and funding for independent oversight. moving forward, can we expect any change from the AfDB in that regard? Or was that just sour grapes from the U.S. just throwing that in after, of course, Steve Mnuchin had asked for an independent board to, to review what the Ethics Commission had already cleared him of, and they're still just throwing that in there? Or do you feel that's something they should look at going forward?
I think Adesina's acceptance speech yesterday touched on transparency and what the process that the Ethics Committee and the Independent Commission of those three member panel, headed by former Ireland's Irish Prime Minister, eventually vindicated his position. But again, every organization needs to continue to look inwards. The WTO is looking for a new leadership, for example. They're thinking of how to retool the WTO and make it more responsive to today's world. So if you look at the AfDB, it's not different as well. You continue to look at independent oversight. You look at how to make things more transparent, and governance and good governance continue to be. Again, you're talking about shareholders' funds. You're talking about north of $200 billion. That's a whole lot of money. All these shareholders are looking for returns on their investment at some point. They're supporting growth. They want to support growth and development on the African continent, and it will benefit the host countries as well. Ireland just became a new member at this meeting 2 days ago. Now, they're not just putting their membership fund and their country there for the fun of it. They want to see the benefit that will come back to Ireland as well as Nigeria, which is a major military shareholder, as well as the United States. Right. So everybody, we need every eyes on the ball, as it were. And that is what the United States perhaps have done. But whatever the undercurrents, whatever might have been, I think everyone within this great institution must have learned their lesson. They must have seen this as a major turning point, that this institution could be rocked somewhat, okay? But having regained the leadership and that being put behind them, I think they'll put all the papers together of the Ethics Committee and the Independent Review panel and try to make something stronger out of it. So I look at, again, at the few engagements or new appointments made by the AfDB over the last 1 or 2 months, and I see that, yes, they are already making efforts in that direction. I saw they have a new chief economist or so, then they have a few other individuals, about 3, 4, 5 within the last 2 months, since this, the Ethics Committee and the probe into Adesina'S affairs in the bank was concerned. And I think they're already on the road doing that. You're talking about an organization with 81 member nations, Africa and non-Africa. This is as big as it can get. Right. So everybody's eye is on the continent. Adesina is in the spotlight, not just within Africa, but globally speaking. Because from the European to the Chinese to the Japanese, everybody is looking into Africa as a land of opportunity. So Homeland Africa is the poster boy where everybody's looking at growth and development, the market. What do we do with the new AfCFTA? How will it work? AfDB and Afrexim Bank are 2 key institutions with the African Union and the Economic Commission for Africa in the new AfCFTA, including NEPAD. So you find out that Adesina is in the limelight. So he is like the economic ambassador for the continent in terms of development finance, and his colleague, Dr. Benedict Orama. All hands together, they will have a lot to do. But institutional reform from within, internally, will continue to happen, to re-engineer yourself, to reprocess yourself, and be sure that there's transparency, there's value for every penny that they spend to intervene in every part of every sector of any of the member nations or within the African continent. So it counts, so it matters. So if the United States says, let's see how each dollar that goes to Nigeria, Ghana, Ivory Coast, South Africa, Mozambique, how Egypt, whatever is being spent, that is realistic. That is what you do as a shareholder. So shareholders always have this. In the corporate world, is a norm. You say, look, can we review things? Can we strengthen things? Because we are putting our money into it. Right. And so you put your mouth where your money is, yeah, and your money where your mouth is.
Fantastic, Boason. Thank you for that. Ibim, Boason just said, of course, that Akinwunmi Adesina is in the limelight, not just in Africa, but around the world. As a media guru, do you think that the various African countries have a good understanding of the efforts that Adesina has and the AfDB, have put into the continent? And if they don't, what could be done to make it better appreciated?
No, I think if you talk about understanding, I think they have a good understanding. I mean, of what is done, of what the AfDB is doing. Now, perhaps what is not happening, in my view, is putting their money where their mouth is. For instance, there are issues around the African trade agreement issues. The issues around that, not every country has fully thrown its weight behind it, including us, by the way. So it's not a question of understanding. It's a question of putting their money where their mouth is. Saying, I understand what Adesina is doing. Saying, I agree with what he's doing. Saying that we need the AfDB and we're going to work with it is really different from actually taking action. As it is right now, even in terms of capital, has everybody paid up? So there are issues that are beyond understanding. I think understanding is just one matter. Do they understand? Yes. Do they even appreciate? Yes. Are they putting their money where their mouth is? I'm not so sure.
Okay. Thank you for that. I do want to follow up on that. Well, Boason, let me quickly come back to you. Many analysts have said, and I believe you touched on this in your very first answer, but let's delve deeper into this. Many analysts have said that for Africa, it's not a lack of funding. You've got a low interest rate environment. If you look at loans, a lot of these loans from multilateral agencies and so on and so forth. It's actually a massive reform deficit with leadership. Agreed?
Across the continent, yes. You saw a report about a few days ago, I think about just last week, about the South Africans lacking a cohesive single plan to get the economy out of the current situation, and that's the most advanced and industrialized economy on the continent. You think President Ramaphosa had his fingers on the button, but every day it looks as if there are a lot of to get done. Look at what is happening in Zambia. President Edgar Lungu with Glencore and sacking the central bank governor overnight. Then you move all the way to Libya. Then you look at the crisis between Ethiopia and its neighbors as far as the Nile River Dam was concerned. The Inga Dam 3 in Congo, the progress being made there and the bit of a setback that is happening. South Africa is putting a question mark on that. You move down to West Africa here or across the Western Sahara and you look at Algeria, Tunisia, a bit of political instability. You talk about Mali, you talk about even Cameroon, just next door in terms of where is President Paul Biya, what is going on there in terms of tensions within the country, between the Anglophone and the Francophone speaking part of the country. Then you move down to West Africa. So there are a whole lot of political issues to deal with. We need reforms, but we need political stability. And I just hope that the political leaders and heads of government in Africa, in each country, will see what the AfDB stands for and what Adesina is doing and his team as something that they should use as a template for good governance in terms of how thorough you should be with your reforms and make sure that every dollar or every kobo or every kwacha or every rand, whatever currency you're using, counts in terms of projects and how quick we need to move to get things done and not allow internal political issues or political whatever in our country allows things to degenerate. Look at Libya. The plan to resume oil exports has now been pulled back because of the warring factions. So they're not making projects. Right. They're not making progress. The Libya Investment Authority wants to start investing again in Sovereign Wealth Fund. I'm sure they will have to do a lot to convince the United Nations about that or how to allow them to get out of the sanctions of 2012. So quite a whole lot that are happening across the continent. But you have a few sweet spots, as you can see things happen. But it needs to be ramped up on the side of the political leadership. So I put it back at the doorstep of the policymakers. Those policies will help the AfDB get a lot done faster and better.
Fantastic. Speaking of getting things done faster, thank you, Boason. Speaking of getting things done faster and better, Ibim, let me ask you about sustainable development goals. The world is, currently focused on SDGs at the moment. Has the administration of Dr. Adesina at the AfDB accelerated the realization of those goals for Africa?
So, the fifth aspect. When you think about the fifth high five, which is actually improving the quality of life for the people of Africa, that's what I would say we would leverage on to see if the AfDB is doing what it should do with regards to the sustainable development goals. But one thing that continues to fall short is the fact that you can't really talk about the SDGs if you're not talking about what is happening with regards to industrialization, with regards to the kind of fundings that are going to providing the road network that we're supposed to improve, the matter of power that we're supposed to improve, the matter of education. All of those things come together. With regards to at least gender equity, which I'm sure you will be shocked if I don't talk about. The AfDB has done some good work. In terms of employment, you've got fairly good representation of women. It would be nice if we have some more, but fairly good representation of women. But regards to the other matters, the social projects, which it has asked countries to prioritize, the institution has done, again, well, but like Boason says, you need the government to key into it. It spends money, but we still have a lot of youth unemployment. That's one of the things that Adesina said he wanted to deal with. That's one of the things he wanted to address. But when you think about it, he can only do so much.
Thank
so
you.
If
okay.
the funding is going in those directions, you're not seeing the commensurate support from the governments driving those fundings to deliver those initiatives to help increase employment, or even improve the infrastructure that would help entrepreneurs do what they need to do on the continent.
Thank you, Ibim. Boason,
yeah, because I think Adesina is the evangelist you need in the room where you have political leaders who are non-evangelists or who are not converted. And if you see he's moving around countries, flying across the countries like a wasp all the time, he's trying to convince the political leaders to be of quote-unquote good behavior. I think he's trying to warm up to them at every point. He's warmed up so much with the African Union that it's becoming a whole lot better. So when you see him in photo ops with presidents and vice presidents in different countries, yes, you're going to get the jobs for the youths done. The political leaders have to do their own. But see, without those high fives, I'm not sure where we're going to get the youth to get the job done for them.
Okay.
Because without the high fives, you need the youth in industrialization. You need them in agri. If you do power, you're going to empower the young boys and the young girls. If you do infrastructure, the same thing. So we are locked into these high fives. So speak about his vision, and his vision yesterday in that address. He kept repeating his vision, and his mission, which has been bought into by everyone in the AfDB and the shareholders as well. Without those visions, if all the 54 sovereigns on the African continent just buy into those 5 high fives of Adesina and the AfDB and just take it up front and just fund it, then would have just resolved our problems. Ab initio.
Fantastic.
Everybody just buy into the high five, just make it the national, because it covers everything. It covers absolutely everything, including the fourth industrial revolution, with which he has taken all the way down to South Korea, to Japan, to China, and trying to give us a handshake across the divide to the Pacific to get us into where the heart of fourth industrial revolution really is. If we key into that, there's nothing else we want. There's nothing else that will happen on the continent if we don't embrace those things. It's just gone to the heart of everything. Just like Ibim said.
Good stuff. Excellent. Only got a minute left to split between the two of you, Ibim. Can you quickly give me your counsel for Dr. Adesina going forward over the next 5 years?
Okay, because just to make this intervention, already the bank has voted the largest amount to these social initiatives. It's voted the largest amount, and it's tried to work through local authorities. So it's saying, okay, what are the local initiatives you have? We're ready to put our money behind it. I think that part of what Dr. Adesina is going to be doing going forward is find ways to also, he's done a lot of good work with the private sector, and I think that's one of the largest strengths, I would say, for the AfDB in this time. He's done a lot of work, but I think he's going to need to continue to deepen those interactions with the private sector. I like what Boason says about moral suasion, being the evangelist in the room, and trying to get governments to behave better. And I think he's going to have to continue to have those conversations. Now I think he's standing on strong enough grounds to have one-on-ones and say to these governments, listen, we've put this money, but this work is not going to happen if you don't do something about it. We need a bit more political will on the continent. We need governments that are going to say, do you know what? We need to actually industrialize this continent. So I think that part of what he's going to be doing and needs to do a lot more is have those one-on-ones where he can strengthen the big guys at the top to do what they need to do. Because again, the AfDB can only put some money out, but he'll continue to hold the shorter end of the stick if the policymakers don't do something about it.
Excellent summary. But Boason, your final thoughts?
That's my final thought. The evangelism has to continue. Continue to be the good. Maybe he's going to be able to convert a bit more of the political leaders who are not taking things serious. I think Ibim just put it very nicely there. Those try to be the nice guy, try to convince them, but without the good guy in the room, Okay. 5 years will be over very soon.
Just like that.
Yes, and the continent will remain, and he will retire.
Ibim Semenitari, thank you so much for joining us to have this conversation about the re-election of Dr. Akinwunmi Adesina with his leadership at the African Development Bank. Also, my thanks to Boason Omofaye, the host of Arise Exchange. Catch him every day, 7 p.m. right here on this channel. Boason, I appreciate your insights.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for watching. We'll be right back after this break.